Hi guys, it's me again. Today what we're going to talk about is something that was asked of me. I've been asked to help a couple people with this. I don't know if I'm the best person to help with this, but I'm going to do my best to explain how I do it, and that is how to outline your story so that you stay on track and don't get stuck. So sit back and relax, grab your coffees. I have a nice one today, and let's get started. Okay, so the reason I say I'm not great at outlining my stories is I don't ever actually do it. So I'll tell you what I do and how I work a bit because it might be helpful to you. Might not be. What I generally do with stories is I have certain plot points that I want to hit. The first 3 episodes usually come fairly easily to me. And then it's very easy to get stuck after that because the first 3 are your big introduction. You release them all at the same time. So it's, for me, that's easy to get those first 3 little chapters going. But throughout the story, I always have an end game. It might change slightly over the course of the story. So, the ending, I'd never have a set ending ready to go, but I have kind of a general direction that I want the story to go in. So everything's always heading in that direction. Sorry, there's work going on next door, so it's a bit banging around over there. That being said, I always know when I'm going to be bringing in other characters, I try and rotate through characters. If you read Just Push Play, you don't have to, but I have 4 love interests in that story, and I try to rotate who's in what chapter pretty consistently. So there's almost always a pattern. So it'll be kind of, Asa, Stella, Ralph, Molly, Asa, Stella, Ralph, Molly. Because I think for me, that's a good way to keep me organized and keep me moving forward, is to say, okay, so the last 2 chapters were about Asa and Molly. This week is going to be about Ralph and Stella. Try and keep it consistent in that way. That being said, I do have a couple stories that were really structured for me. Other people might think this is still very disorganized. The first time I actually did this was in How to Find Your Soulmate in 12 Easy Steps, and the title ended up dictating how many chapters I had. It was a random number, completely arbitrary. I didn't have the steps ready to go when I came up with the title, which in hindsight was probably a little insane. But I knew I'd have, a prologue, 12 steps, epilogue, because it was meant to be following this self-help book in steps to find his soulmate. Very self-explanatory. So I had the titles for each chapter, but within each chapter, I didn't have every step the main character Wes took written out. I wanted it to be organic. I wanted it to flow naturally from one step to the next. Sometimes I didn't even mention the steps anywhere within the chapter, except you'd see the title right in the beginning, and that was it. And the step wouldn't be specifically mentioned, or he wasn't sitting there going, okay, this chapter I need to do this, so let's do this. It was much more organic than that, and I think that's what helped keep that story flowing really well. I never really got off track with that story because it was structured. I got through it fairly quickly because I always had an idea of what was coming next, and I could, build up to that in the chapter before. And then get into the next chapter and start building up towards the next one. So in that way, having that structure kept me really well on track. Another story that has that is Arlo in Dystopia, but that is directed by its parallels with Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass. So it's not following the stories exactly, but it does have those major plot points that I'm trying to pull in, or those characters that I'm trying to introduce that have the parallel with Alice in Wonderland. So Arlo is Alice, King is the Red Queen, Prince is the White Queen. You have Chaz, who's the Cheshire Cat, and Whitney, who's the White Rabbit, Dre and Daria, who are Tweedledee and Tweedledum, even Humpty Dumpty's in there. So, I have these different aspects of Alice that I try and make sure are brought into Arlo so that I can keep it on track. And a lot of these, the way I bring these things in is I do research. I've read Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I've seen all the movies. I read analysis on the stories because I want to make that well-rounded story, and that's how I stay on track, and that's how I get inspired also. And Arlo's a dystopian, so I love dystopian stories. It has aspects of Brave New World in it, so it has these. I think having this kind of wide net of research and these plot points that you want to hit, having all that stuff kind of ready to go, taking notes. I take notes on my phone. If I have a notepad next to me, I'll write stuff down. My computer, I'll write notes down. I have a place where I keep everything on my computer or my phone. Other things are scattered all over this disaster of a house. But I always make sure if I get an idea, I write it down somewhere, because I think that helps keep me on track. That helps keep me inspired to write the next chapter or keep going. And I think it's really important to have those kind of, be interested in what you're writing and know where you're headed. That's kind of the most important thing to me. Have that end game so that you know what you're heading towards. Otherwise, you end up kind of waffling around in the middle and heading in different directions, and then you forget what you were actually heading towards. So that's kind of my main point, is I always have a kind of a good start, some plot points that I want to hit along the way. They could rearrange themselves depending on how the story's flowing, but there's always that end game. Always, where I think the main character should be at the end of the story. If you have various endings, that's fine. You can have all those different endings, but make sure all their choices leading up to it are heading towards those endings. Even if they change slightly, you're going to have some things that don't, when you first start the story, they're not going to work at the end. So you end up having to adjust. And I think that's partly why I don't have that rigid structure, because I know I'm not going to stay 100% on track. I just want to make sure that I kind of tell the story I want to tell from start to finish. If it changes along the way, there's a reason for that. But I do have that kind of, how I want the character to have developed by the end to get to that kind of conclusion that is satisfying for not just the reader, but for myself. So I know I've kind of ended it in the best possible way. I hope this video was helpful for you to kind of hear my process, sort of, my kind of chaotic process. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. Any comments? If you do something differently, I'd love to hear about it. Leave those in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe for updates. There'll be a new video coming every week, more writing tips, more directing tutorials, tips, anything you want to know about, you can let me know. You can hit me up over on my Instagram page, which is @LHepisode, Or you can get me on Facebook, which is Lauren on Episode, just like this channel. And hopefully I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.